3, 2, 1.
Boom, and welcome to the Big Honker Podcast, brought to you by Gundog Outdoors. I'm Jeff Stanfield with the world-famous Andy Shaver.
Yes. The field trauma kit from Gundog. Every pickup truck needs one. Every guy needs one in his bag. Go get it.
GundogOutdoors.com. With us today from some town in Wyoming that I forgot to ask the name because I knew I couldn't pronounce it anyways. It's a small town with 350 people. A game warden who's just wrote a book called The Poacher's Son, Mr. Scott Werbelow. God dang it, I fuck every intro up. It don't matter who it is. Scott, how are you doing, sir?
You got the book title wrong also, didn't you?
Did I? Did I say it wrong?
Good. Good. How are you doing, Jeff and Andy?
Did I pronounce the book wrong, too?
Yeah, but you almost had it right. But it's a little town called Meeteetse, Wyoming. Sits about 30 miles south of Cody, Wyoming. And the book is titled Son of a Poacher, Wyoming Warden in the Making.
What did I say a minute ago?
Poacher's Son, I think.
Oh, it's Son of a Poacher. I get all fucked up. After I say my name and get Andy's name out, then it goes to shit because I got to watch what I say. See, now I'm back to just talking, and so I'm fine.
Well, it's kind of fine.
Anyways, I read your book yesterday, Scott, from cover to cover last night. A great book. I'm a Fast Reader is a very good book. Me and you are the same age. We grew up in the same era, but you obviously were a little wilder than I was growing up.
I think I've definitely had 9 lives.
You know you have, because there's a lot of things you talk about in that book. Start out with, I've talked about this before, when we were in 3rd and 4th grade, it wasn't nothing for a kid to go buy a can of snuff.
No, I started chewing in the 3rd grade, working on the ranch. All the hired hands chewed and the sheep herders chewed, and you just weren't a man unless you chewed. And so every Friday we got that free little cup of chocolate milk. I'd save my milk cartons and put them in my desk, and that was my spit cup. I'd raise the little desktop up and spit in my little chocolate milk container.
In the 3rd grade?
Yeah.
3rd grade. Hell.
Whoa.
I remember going with I tried dipping one time and I got sick and threw up on it like you and your brother both did. But I was a quitter. You're not a quitter. And so I never did do it again. I learned my lesson in 3rd grade with Copenhagen.
That's the thing that I can't get past with snuff users is everybody gets sick.
Well, yeah.
Everybody gets sick, but you just keep prodding through it.
No, I was a quitter. I said, fuck it, I wasn't trying it again.
Scott wasn't?
No, when you read his book, he don't quit shit. I found that out pretty quick.
I took a big old 3-finger dip as my first one because that's what my dad did. And I was out raking hay in a hayfield, and I got dizzy and started sweating, and I thought I had food poisoning from the sandwich that I ate. So I got off the tractor, and I laid in the middle of the hayfield out there next to a row of hay. I thought I was going to die. I had the spins, and I actually walked back to where my dad was working, and I said, I think I got food poisoning. And he laughed. He goes, I think I know what's going on here.
So what do? You spit it out? How long did the spins last? Are you worthless for the rest of the afternoon?
No, it was 15 or 20 minutes. Once you spit it out, they go away pretty quick.
I got sick one time. There was an old dance hall here, and that's where all the high school kids used to go to. And that's where, you go to grow up, basically. And I took a big old dip of Copenhagen one night, and they had some rap song on, and the music's pounding, and the strobe lights are going off and on and off and on, and bam, 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 bam. And I had that dip in my mouth, and it stayed in there for about 5 minutes, and those strobe lights and the music and everything, and I was done for.
Well, see, you started
couldn't go out dancing anymore because I was sick, throwing up, and nobody wants to dance with the puking kids. So
well, you started out too old. He was younger. I don't remember. You said in that book that you remember buying snuff for 25 cents. I remember it being 50 cents. I don't remember it 25 cents. And Texas may have had more of a tax on it than Wyoming did, but that was the same time frame.
Yeah, the first can I bought, I believe I was in 3rd grade, and I walked down to Safeway, and I bought it, and the gal asked me if that was for my dad, and I said, yes, ma'am.
That is crazy.
That's the way they ID'd back then. How much is it now? Isn't it?
Fuck, it's about $6 a can.
$5.
Yeah, almost $6 a can.
They're supposed to be adding a $2 can tax on it too, coming out pretty quick.
Oh boy.
Oh, geez.
Biden.
I might have.
Yeah.
Got to try to get the working man. On your book, starts out with your life. Your dad was an alcoholic, and he passed away at a young age of 40 years old. and he was pretty influential in your life. And then you've got a stepdad who seems to be a really hell of a great guy that raised you, and you had some good characters in your life. But you were treated. When we were kids, things weren't sugar coated like they are for kids today. We were around everything, and a kid was meant to work and to help and to be seen and not heard, basically. And that's kind of the life you grew up in.
Yes, exactly. I did dedicate this book to my stepfather, Martin Malin. He was my mentor in life, and if you read the book, you'll know why. He took me under his wing, and the first day I met him out on the ranch, we lived on a remote ranch about 40 miles from any town. He loaded me on the back of his little Suzuki 90 motorcycle and took me out into a hayfield, and there was about I don't know what that tractor cost back in the 70s, but it was a big four-wheel drive international tractor, and he asked me if I could drive that back to the house, and it was hooked with a big disc, and the house was probably 2 miles away, and I literally couldn't sit in the chair and see over the steering wheel at the same time. I had to stand up to run the pedals, and he jumped on his motorcycle and said, "See you in a bit," and here I had this $100,000 tractor at about 7 years old, and I fired it up, and it was kind of funny because I couldn't remember all the levers he told me to hit, but I throttled it up and I put it in gear and I popped the clutch and the smoke rolled out of the smokestack, and it was kind of feeling like it was pulling hard, and I thought, what the hell's going on here? And I looked behind me and the disc was down, so I was discing. So I stopped the tractor, raised the disc, but anyhow, I stood up and I drove it all the way home, and I remember going through a cattle guard right in front of the house, and I had about an inch of clearance on each side, and my mom was standing in the yard and she about died. She looked at my stepdad and said, "Oh my God, what have you done?" And he said, "Oh, he'll be fine." And so he just started out that way with me at a very young age, and I became a man very quick. And he trusted me to do anything that a grown man would do. He'd show me how to do it once, and I'd do it. And that gave me so much confidence in life, all through my life, to have confidence in anything I do. And so he's probably a big share of how I turned out the way I did.
Is he still alive?
Yes, he's 88 years old and living in Mexico, and we just went and visited him last week.
Where does he live at in Mexico?
He's on Lake Chapala, just south of Guadalajara.
Is it safe down there where he is?
He's 88 years old. He don't care.
Yeah, it's pretty safe down there. I mean, they have gangs down there, gangs fighting gangs, and they tend to leave the Americans alone for the most part. But they have crime just like everybody else.
What made him want to go down to Mexico?
I think he was a Wyoming rancher, and he worked every day of his life till he was 65, 10, 14 hours a day. And he never had two quarters to rub together, never liked to travel. He ended up selling his ranch and did fairly well on that. And my mom took him down there. She had a friend down there that she went to high school with, and he fell in love with it. And it's just a real steady climate down there. It's the most steady climate in the world. It's about 85 degrees year-round where they live. It can get down to 65 and up to 90, but it's right around 85 degrees. So I think he just wanted to get out of the cold. And
I don't know that I could do that. We just got back from Cancun. And I was telling my wife, like, it's February. It's 19 degrees back home. There's snow on the ground. And these people are running around in flip-flops and barefoot. I don't know. I think I need the yin and yang in my life. I think I need the cold. I don't think I could live in paradise.
That's a different Mexico, though.
I understand it's a different Mexico. I'm not talking about what kind of Mexico it is. I'm talking about always living in paradise. At my age, I enjoy the cold and the crappy weather. That way, when I go down there, it's a relief.
I just came back from Puerto Vallarta, and we flew right over the Guadalajara, and that canyon area in the Sierra Madre. That's a pretty place. They live in the mountains then.
Yeah, they actually live right on Lake Chapala, and then they have a beach house down in Manzanillo.
Uh-huh.
They're just down from Puerto Vallarta, about a 5-hour bus ride is where their condo on the beach is.
That would be a neat place to live.
Just living the dream.
I'm jealous of them.
Just living the dream.
Yeah. But it's tough to get down there and get back. Once I get there, I'm happy, but it's stressful to get down there and get back. And you deal with the language barrier, and you fly into Guadalajara International Airport. It's an 8 million people city, and you're like the only white boy in there. Nobody speaks English. It's kind of intimidating.
That's drug cartel central too. I've been to Guadalajara before. It is a cool town. Really neat place.
Are your parents? Is he fluent in Spanish?
No, not really. Enough to get by.
That's it.
You have mucho U.S. dollars, you'll get by, survive down there just fine.
Yep, all it takes is money. You can do anything you want.
One of the things about the book that you're reading the book reminded me of my life growing up, because we are the same age, and I remember the same things, the same Christmas presents you got. Everything was exactly the way it is. My dad drank a lot when I was growing up. I mean, I had a single mom for a while. I mean, everything in your book I could relate to, every single bit of it, except for the fact of y'all jumping the freaking goddamn snow machine. I couldn't even think of the word for it. By reading the stories in the book, it's amazing you're still alive.
No, and when you live out on a ranch as a kid and you don't go to town very often, you figure out things to entertain yourself. And one of those things was to jump on a snow machine at about 10 or 11 o'clock at night and go out in the hayfields and chase jackrabbits. And I had a 1969 Puma 440. The headlight only shined about 15 feet on it. Once you got a jackrabbit between your skis, it was pretty intense. You wanted to run him over, and you weren't going to do anything to let him get away. And next thing you know, you'd look up and there's a canal or a fence, and we had more damn wrecks out there, and we ran over miles of my dad's gated pipe, destroyed that, chasing rabbits. But that was our entertainment. And like it said in the book, there was times I would play sick from school and my parents would go to work, and I'd jump on my little motorcycle and my fishing pole and a bucket of worms, and I'd go about 7 miles and go fish up a creek called Beaver Creek and just catch big cutthroat all day long, be back home by 4 in bed, so my mom thought I was still sick. And
So what does it do when you run? The jackrabbit gets caught in the track and then spits them out the other end, or what?
Most of the time you run over the top of them. You're really lucky if you can ever hit one, but most of the time you run over the top of them and it sinks them down in the snow and they jump up and head the other direction.
Oh, really?
But yeah, rarely does it kill them unless you hit them several times.
Now, on y'all's ranch, did y'all have grizzly bears?
No, we didn't. Not back then.
You do now, though?
The grizzly bears were a little further to the west of us, kind of over in the Cody area. We were about an hour to the east of that. The Bighorn Mountains is where this place was located, and to this day we're not aware of any grizzly bears in the Bighorns, but it's pretty dang close to where they're at.
Now, you had to want to be a game warden really bad, as hard as you worked to become a game warden, because you worked for 4 years as basically a free game warden for the state of Wyoming. Is that pretty correct? They didn't pay you very well, and you worked your ass off 8 months or 9 months out of the year, correct?
Yes. It was very difficult to get a job back then, and you were pretty happy to get a temporary job. And I didn't have a wildlife degree. I was told I'd never be a game warden, and I just kept plugging away. And as the book says, I finally, after 4 years and a few lucky breaks, they let me take the game warden's exam. I didn't have a single wildlife management class when they allowed me to take it, and it was very competitive. I think I had 450 some people apply to take it, and they allowed 156 to take it. Out of that, 53 passed it. They narrowed that down through an oral interview and a background check, polygraph. They narrowed that down to 23 for the psychological, and they hired 10 out of that for a 4-month job called the Reservoir Crew, and that's doing watercraft enforcement on the bigger lakes in Wyoming. So your goal was to get that 4-month job with no benefits on the Reservoir Crew. And I went through the whole process, and I thought I was pretty honest through the whole psychological. I hadn't ever done drugs or anything wrong, and I'd already been working for him for 3 or 4 years. And at the end of the day, I didn't get hired, and that about broke my heart. It was like that was my chance. I later found out I did very well on the competitive game warden exam, and I couldn't figure out why I didn't get hired. Maybe the psychologist thought I was goofier than a pet coon or something. I don't know. But they didn't hire me, and so I was getting ready to quit the game and fish, and I went back and got my teaching certification up and running. And a couple of those guys they hired got fired that summer, and I knew they were going to have a couple openings. And I knew they wouldn't give that whole game warden's exam again because of 2 openings. So I called a guy and told him I was still interested and still available. And he ended up calling me several weeks later, and they offered me a job in Casper on the Reservoir Crew. And that's how I got started.
Now, why is there such a vetting process for the Wyoming game warden?
It's it's really interesting because back then there were no jobs. When people got hired as a game warden, that was their career, and they would do it for 30 or 40 years. So you would have to wait for someone to retire. And when I was trying to get on, there just wasn't much retirement going on. But when they hire somebody for 4 months and you go do watercraft enforcement and you don't get hired that first year, they rehire you the next year. You have to go through the game warden's exam, that whole process again. Pretty quick, you've been doing this 3 or 4 years, and they know who their good guys are, and they know the ones that aren't probably going to make it. And so it gives them a good opportunity to take a really good look at all their new hires and pick their best ones. And so the Game and Fish has hired some really good game wardens over the years.
Yep. Is there a vetting process like that for like Wyoming State Troopers or any other of these law enforcement entities, or is it just specific to the Game Warden Academy?
I would say it's probably more difficult to become a game warden. Most of the other law enforcement agencies, some of them don't even require a degree. You just have to go to the law enforcement academy and get trained, and that's about a 14-week course.
But what I'm getting
how
at
many
is
game
why.
wardens are in the state of Wyoming? Even it's a big area, but there's not a lot of population.
I understand. Okay, go ahead.
How many game wardens do they even have in Wyoming?
There's 63 permanent game wardens. And then we have 8 different regions in the state. So there's a regional wildlife supervisor in each region who's also a commissioned warden. And we have an investigator in each region, and they're also a commissioned game warden. And so when you add up all of the positions total, it's probably closer to 100. But we have 63 permanent game wardens with a district.
63 permanent game wardens. Texas has 352 counties, I believe. And I think 356.
Or 354.
And we've got some game wardens, like our game warden out here works 2 counties because we basically are in Wyoming. We're in a small area with not a lot of population. But I'll bet you in Texas there's 1,000 game wardens or more. But there's a lot. Wow. I mean, and we may have more than that. But Wyoming just doesn't. I mean, 63 permanent game wardens. That's like you said. If a guy keeps a job for 25 years, there's not very many openings that come up.
But
no.
What doesn't make sense to me is because I hear the same thing about Texas, and I'm trying to find how many game wardens are. I hear the same thing about the state of Texas and just how grueling of a process it is.
It's hard to become a highway patrol here too, though.
Right, but why is there not the same emphasis on a regular police officer? I understand that
there's a shortage of policemen. There's not a shortage of game wardens.
So they know that they can just bust these guys' balls and put them over the ringer because there's a shortage of them, or because there's more applicants than there are positions. That's what I'm trying to drive at. There's not enough people signing up to be just your average beat cop, so they just let whoever signs up through.
Well, it's still not that easy to be a cop, but I mean it's hard.
It's a lot easier than it is to be a game warden
because there's a limited number of jobs. There's tons of every city in a town, every city in Texas has a police officer.
The unique thing about the Wyoming game warden, and a lot of people don't know this, is we are not full peace officer status. We can only enforce Title 23, which is all the hunt regulations, and Title 41, which is all the watercraft stuff. But our game wardens spend about 30% of their time doing law enforcement, about 30% of their time with management and biology, and about 30% of their time with PR, with landowners and sportsmen. So about 30% of our time is what we do in law enforcement. So we need a well-rounded guy that has the biology side of it as well as the law enforcement.
So y'all are not like in Texas, our game wardens are the same as our highway patrolmen. They're a state police officer. They can do anything that a regular police officer can. Anything. Y'all don't do that in Wyoming.
And I think our game wardens have more jurisdiction.
They have more. They can do more search and seizures on searches because of some of their. They can do more than a regular highway patrolman can. But they essentially are a Texas trooper. So in Wyoming, you're not doing law enforcement just like if they have if y'all are doing search warrants in your area, you don't assist with the highway patrol on that.
We have assisted, and they've assisted us as well. I guess the difference is we don't pull people over for speeding, for drugs, for DUI. We do have a BUI, boating under the influence, that we can enforce. But with our limited peace officer status, we don't have the authority to do that. But like you said, if we walk into a hunting camp or we have a vehicle come through one of our check stations, if we have probable cause that a violation has occurred, we can search their camp, their coolers, their pickup, their tents, that sort of thing, where other law enforcement agencies have to go ahead and get that search warrant ahead of time.
You can't do a DUI stop, though, if you see somebody driving drunk down the road?
No, we can call it in, and we can get authorization to stop them.
Okay, see, that's the difference in Texas. I can pull you over.
493.
Okay, I'll give you. Hold on, just a minute. One other thing too is like in Knox County, we have 10 police officers or 12. We only have one game warden. That's what I'm saying. There's just not as many of them.
But there's 493 game wardens. In the state of
I figured we had more than that even. Here's another thing for you, Scott. The guy that gave your psychological exam, he seemed like a real asshole.
He was, and he's still working for us. This is 30 years later.
Yeah, he seemed like a real jackass to me. No personality at all on him.
Well, you read in the book that I failed to complete the psychological exam. It was 2,000 yes/no questions, and I was the last guy sitting at the table. Everybody was gone, and I got to the end of the page, and everybody had been gone for like 20 minutes, and I thought, shit, I got to get this thing over with. And I handed it in, and it was a stressful day. That's the same day I took the warden's exam, had the oral interview, did the psychological. I went back to my motel room, cracked open a Coors Light, chugged about half of it down, and the phone rang, and I thought, who would be calling me at a motel room in Cheyenne, Wyoming? And I picked up the phone, and she said, hello, is this Scott Werblow? And I said, yeah. She goes, this is so-and-so with Dr. Wahera's office. Is there any reason you failed to complete your psychological exam? So I don't think so. She says, no, you still have another 200 questions.
Oh, shit.
I said, can I come back down and finish that? And she says, well, yeah, if you hurry up. So they had to open the doors, turn on the lights for me. I come back in there. Well, now I stood out as a dumbass, and the doctor was there, and he got to meet the dumbass. And so when he interviewed me, he worked me over pretty hard, and he said, Scott, is there any reason you didn't fill this form out? I said, sir, I remember filling that form out. I specifically remember. Well, no, you didn't, because you didn't sign it here. And just messing with me and trying to get me to argue with him, get mad. But he messed with me a bunch.
What were the type of questions that were on there?
Oh, they ask a lot, and it's probably even more in depth now. You actually have to fill out about a 6 or 8 page history, and it asks you if you've ever had any violations, domestic violence, any fighting, alcohol, drugs, in the last 10 years sort of thing. And so it's pretty strict. And now when you take the Wyoming Game Warden's exam, you can do it online in your office. So you could cheat on it if you wanted to. But the first question they ask you on the polygraph is, did you cheat on the Wyoming Game Warden's exam? And the polygraph actually sorts out a lot of people.
Yeah, and this is where it's so interesting, because part of you as a game warden, you kind of want that renegade. You because you're dealing with poachers and stuff, so you have to know what to look for. If you get a straight-laced guy that's never broken any law, like, he's not going to know the tricks of the trade. So on one side, you kind of want that guy that maybe was a rebel in his younger days, and
You're exactly right, Andy. And when the psychologist rates you, he rates you low risk, medium risk, or high risk. So if he rates you low risk, you haven't done shit in your life, in my opinion.
That's exactly right.
If he rates you high risk, you're more of that rebel that's got out there, ain't afraid to get in a fight, get your hands dirty. And to be honest with you, that's what kind of game wardens we need. We need somebody that's willing to step up to the plate and take a punch and deal with business and show your authority when needed. But I didn't mean to interrupt you there. Things have changed a great deal since I took it. Now we're lucky to get 100 people that want to take the warden's exam. If they get hired, they go right into a permanent job that has benefits, because we lost a lot of people over the years to other states because there was no jobs. So now they've made it permanent. Once you get hired, you go right to the academy. And we've got such turnover now that you get out of the academy, you have your own district. Those people don't even know what they got. They have no idea what I went through to get where I'm at. And to be honest with you, with this new generation, we're not hiring ranch kids and kids that grew up hunting and fishing. We got to ask them questions like, have you ever hunted before? Do you know how to run an ATV? Have you ever put chains on a pickup? And they haven't. And we're getting a lot of those type of people. It's just totally different now than it used to be. And what we're finding is we get them hired for a year or two, and they decide, well, that was kind of fun. I think I'll go do something different.
Scary.
You had some things that I found were really interesting. First, I found the psychiatrist was a real jackass, and we agreed on that one. One of the things I thought was interesting for a Wyoming is you would get your ass chewed out by these people when you were trying to run deer off their alfalfa or their elk off their alfalfa. I don't think in Texas our game wardens are responsible for that, and then the state of Wyoming writes these people a check for damage done by the wildlife. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah. We have probably the best program in the world for taking care of our landowners. We pay for any damage that wildlife causes to their crops. If they raise sheep, cattle, whatever they raise, if any of our big game animals or trophy game animals kill them, let's say a grizzly bear, mountain lion, wolf, we pay for it. We have to go ahead and document the kill and investigate it and determine what killed it. But then we pay for it, and they got a 2-page application they have to fill out for damages, have it notarized. They send it to us. Most of our game wardens sit down at the kitchen table with them with a cup of coffee and help them fill it out, and we pay for it all. And we spend well over $1 million a year on paying for grizzly bear damage.
That is absolutely crazy. I've never heard of that before. And
No.
But you would spend time when you were that, I don't know what you call it, a reserve game warden your first year, and all you would do is at nighttime would run around shooting firecrackers at deer and elk, trying to get them out of people's fields.
Yeah, that's when I was called a damage technician.
Yes.
That was my job, was to take care of wildlife damage. And that was one of the funnest jobs I ever had. I couldn't believe I was getting paid to do that. You'd literally go out at night and spotlight deer and shoot cracker shells and bird bombs and run them out of the fields and just try to prevent the damage. And just a lot of crazy stories with some of those nights. The one that I recall the best that I just got to tell is we had a landowner over there that hated the game and fish, hated wildlife on his crops. And I got a message to call him. He was upset. He wanted me to meet with him. Well, this guy wasn't your typical Wyoming rancher. He was to a degree, but he was more of a Wyoming cowboy / rancher. He was an alcoholic. He had no teeth, and he was a hair lip. And he talked really loud. And you could hear this guy talking a block away. And so I had to go meet with him one morning, and I walked up on the deck of his house, and I banged on the door. As soon as I banged on the door, this little border collie came out from under the deck and bit me in the calf. Well, bit me in the calf right when he was opening the door. And he goes, "Jesus Christ, that fucking dog just bite you?" I said, "Yeah, he did." He goes, "Son of a bitch, I was going to put that son of a bitch down, but he dog by the game warden. That's a good son of a bitch right there. I think I'll keep him down."
What a dick.
That's awesome, man.
And just one more story about that guy. It was a couple nights later. I showed up out in his field. It was about 10 o'clock at night, and I shot some cracker shells and ran my sirens. I had about 30 or 40 head of deer headed to the east out of his field, and I heard this truck start up in the distance. Vroom, vroom, vroom. And I thought, holy cow, that's probably this guy. And pretty quick, I see this little Nissan truck go by me 100 miles an hour on this little secondary highway. And he went down a couple miles and crossed a bridge and got on the other side of the creek. And now he's on a 2-track, and he's just driving like an asshole. You can hear stuff flying out of the back of his truck. And pretty quick, he hits the brakes, and he's right across from me on the other side of the creek. And the deer are running in his headlights. And he jumps out and stands in front of his headlights and just starts shooting a pistol at these deer. Boom, boom, boom. And I was like, holy crap, I got to get over there and see what's going on. So I worked my way over there. And by the time I got there, he was standing in his headlights reloading his .44 Magnum. And he looks up at me and he goes, "Jesus Christ, I don't know how many of them sons of bitches I hit, but I tried to hit them all. They don't stand there and look at you very long when they got a .44 on their ass, I can tell you that." But he was trying to kill him.
So is that a ticket?
Yeah, he didn't actually kill anything. I mean, I could have pushed it and wrote him for attempt to take, but I just told him that wasn't the good thing to be doing here, and I would go ahead and get him off there. He didn't need to mess with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you were out there doing. So, don't be an asshole and do all this shit and work yourself into a ticket.
Yeah.
My hat's off to the game wardens, because almost everybody you encounter either has a pocket knife, fishing. I mean, they've got a weapon of some sort most of the time. And probably even up there, given that you're only, you don't have the other stuff that some of these Texas game wardens do. But you're always encountering somebody that's got a means to hurt you. That's scary.
Yes, you're exactly right. And probably one of the biggest things in today's age is everybody's got a can of pepper spray on their side. And I think that could be pretty lethal from a distance, you know. And so that's something to be aware of as well. But you're right, you know, they got a knife, they got a gun, they got a pistol, they got bear spray. And generally when you're dealing with a hunting camp, it's 4, 5, 6, 8 people, and a lot of time alcohol is involved. And when you got a violation and you're in their camp at night and they've been drinking, I mean, you're outnumbered. And so our closest backup generally in Wyoming is probably at least an hour away.
Tell the story about the guy with the axe.
Yeah, so I was checking fishermen up what they call the Miracle Mile, and it was Memorial Day weekend. It was raining, and I looked up, and there was a camp there with a blue tarp over it, and they had a fire going, and it was a bunch of Hispanic people, probably about 8 of them. They were all under the tarp, getting warm by the fire. And I told my partner, I said, let's stop in there and check their fishing licenses while we're here. None of them were fishing, so we couldn't prove anything, but I stopped in there and they had fishing poles leaning up against the trees and laying on the ground. And I said, well, while I'm here, why don't I look at your fishing licenses, and then I won't have to check you later on when you're on the river. And they said, we don't have any fishing licenses, and we're not going to get any fishing licenses until it quits raining. And there was a store that they could go to about 5 miles away and buy a fishing license. But the whole time I'm talking to him, there's this big Hispanic guy sitting in a chair, and he's just glaring at me like he's looking right through me. And I picked up on that. And so my partner and I went back to the patrol cabin, and we cooked a steak, and the sun was going down, and the clouds broke for just a minute. It had that beautiful sunset. I looked at my partner. I said, you want to go write a ticket? I said, I know those guys are fishing because the sun's out. So we jumped in the patrol truck, got up on a hill. We could look at them about a mile away, I would say. And 2 of them were down fishing. I couldn't see the one guy. I could just see him behind some willows. I could see the pole up in the air. I could see the other guy pretty well and what he was wearing. So I identified him. So about that time, some little boy went running back to their camp. He had a yellow slicker on, and he saw us up on the hill. And he told everybody the game wardens are up there watching you. So these guys reeled up and went back to camp. So we rolled into their camp. It's dark now. And I pulled the one guy away from the fire and was interviewing him, and he was lying to me. And I kept looking over at this big guy, and he's just glaring at me. And keep in mind, I got my partner there, so that's helpful. But I finally told the guy I was tired of him lying, that I was going to write him a ticket, and that the bond was going to be $100, and that he had to pay the bond because he was from Colorado. Back then, if you were from out of state, you had to pay the bond or we had to take you to jail. And so he says, I don't think I have that kind of money. I said, well, you might get with your friends and try to see if they'll help you out. If not, I got to haul you to jail. So he went back to talk to them, and this big guy is still glaring at me. And I called the second guy over, and I said, I need to see your fishing license. He said, I wasn't fishing. I said, sir, I watched you fish for at least 10 minutes. And he said, no, I was practicing my casting. Could you grab your fishing pole for me and let me take a look at it? So he goes and gets his pole. He was smart enough to break the line off of it. All he had was a lead sinker hanging on the end of the line. And I said, well, you can tell me that you were practicing your casting, but that's bullshit. You were fishing. You know it. I know it. Do you have your driver's license? And he kind of got in my face, and I got in his face, and we're about 20 yards from this camp where they got their fire going. And about the time I raised his voice, I think I said, I'm tired of you lying to me, and I'm going to write you a ticket. This big Hispanic guy jumped out of his chair, and he had a double-edged axe, and he ran right between us, and he put the axe on my forehead, and he looked me right in the eye, and he says, you need to get the fuck out of my camp right now. And I could finish the story, but that's where my first book ends. But I'll finish it if you want.
Yes, please. Yeah, absolutely.
So I was scared to death. My partner drew his pistol. I knew that. And I looked him right in the eye, and I never broke a word. I mean, I never missed a step. I looked him right in the eye. I said, no, sir, you need to go sit in that chair, or you and your axe are going to go to jail. And he goes, okay. And he went and sat in the chair. And I was just shaking. And so I hadn't written many tickets at this point in my career, and I was just shaking while I was writing this ticket. and it took me quite a while to write it. And I still got to go back to their camp now and have this guy sign it. They came up short on the money. They were like $6 short or something, but I said, that's good enough. I'll take it. And anyhow, I got back to the cabin, and my partner looked at me and he goes, you handled that really well, Swerb. I'm proud of you. But you left his driver's license on the dash, and now you got to take it back to him. Well, now they've had about 10 or 15 minutes to get good and pissed off at me, and I had to go back to their camp. And so I just stuck it under his windshield wiper and yelled at him. I said, here's your driver's license under your windshield wiper. And all I heard was, fuck you.
Oh, jeez.
It amazes me how people get rude and cuss at guys that can take you to jail. Yeah, it just blows my mind how people, you knew damn well you were going out there to go fishing in a camp. Buy your fucking license. Did you let him fish after that, or did you make him go to town and get a license before he could fish?
No, I told him he needed a license before he could go fish again.
We see it all the time out here because our game wardens, they come out here at least once a week, sometimes 2-3 times a week. And they're always, they're checking our hunters, and, we've got a good relationship with them. But
they like to eat.
We see that with our hunters interacting with the game wardens. There are more guys that talk themselves into a ticket.
I've had situations where I go up and bang on somebody's door, and there's a violation, and that's why I'm there. It may not be a very serious violation. When I go bang on that door, my intent is to discuss the violation with them, and in my mind, I'm already going to write them a warning. Mm-hmm. That's how I'm going to handle it. Next thing you know, they crack the door open. They tell me that I need to get an attorney. They're going to get an attorney. I won't talk to you. It's like, sir, I just want to visit with you about something simple here. And next thing you know, they won't talk to you, so you write them a ticket. They end up in court. They want to go to a jury trial. That costs them thousands of dollars in attorney fees. They end up losing. And if he'd have just opened the damn door and talked to me, he'd have got a warning.
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
Or guys that get pulled over, and they, it's going to be something silly. That's probably going to start out as a warning, but they're a dickhead to the cop for going 2 over, and they end up getting a ticket over the deal. Well, all cops are assholes. Well, maybe if you change the way that you interface with them, maybe they won't be such an asshole to you all the time.
One of the things in the book that struck me was how nasty and crappy a job a sheep herder's job is. Now, did I get that right from reading your book, that is a miserable job?
Well, I don't know. Most of the sheep herders we had were elderly people, and as a kid, I thought, man, this job would suck. But as I got older, I thought, all you got to do is keep an eye out over this band of sheep. You're up here by yourself in the middle of nowhere. It's quiet. You can go arrowhead hunting, look for buffalo heads. You got the whole day to do whatever you want as long as you keep the sheep gathered up. And I could probably see myself doing that the older I get. But they were a different breed. I think a lot of them were wanted, and they wanted to get away from society to where they wouldn't be found. And a lot of them were really good at leather work and making knives, and I think they probably learned that in prison somewhere. But they were unique characters, and I had a lot of coffee as a 10-year-old kid and conversations with them in a sheep wagon. That was my job, to go check on the sheep herders.
Do they still have sheep herders today like that?
Yeah, they do, but the number of sheep on the landscape is probably 80% less than what it used to be.
There's just not a market for it no more. It's flooded. The market's flooded right now, right?
I think there's just a lot of different regulations that they're having to deal with their grazing permits, and there's a big push for some of these conservation groups to buy out large chunks of property that can no longer be grazed, and it's just been an uphill battle for them.
Now, you talked about buffalo heads. In your book, you talk about your first buffalo head you found in the water, right?
Yeah.
In the river. How often do you find buffalo heads? Because other than your book, I've never known anyone that was a buffalo head that went looking for them. Arrowheads, yes.
Well, he's got 5 right behind him.
That's your hobby, right? Is looking for buffalo heads?
Yeah, that's been my passion in life, and I would say that when that sheep herder brought that first buffalo head down to our house, I was about 10 years old, and it was a perfect buffalo head, still had the sheaths on it, and he traded my mom a banana cream pie for that buffalo head, and I still have that head hanging in my bedroom. But as a kid, whatever reason, I just told myself, I want to find one of those someday, and I would end up finding one in a creek one day, And I was hooked after that. And I started looking in that creek, and I found several more. But in all honesty, I know a lot of people that get out a lot and that have looked a lot. And if you find one perfect buffalo head in your life, that's a good thing. If you think about a buffalo, they died back in like 1885, somewhere in there. They died by a creek. They laid out there for however many years. They had to get buried to get preserved, and then they had to get exposed to be found. So how many years did it take for them to lay there on the ground and end up a foot deep in the dirt, and then a high water comes through a ravine and washes out a corner, and there's happens to be a buffalo that died there and a bone sticking out of the bank or a horn? That's what I look for. And I can tell you that I've probably walked more miles looking for a buffalo head than probably anybody in the world. And if I'm wrong there, I would at least like to meet that guy. But, my wife and I went last year in November. It was real mild. November and December, we found 7 of them, which is huge. I've probably got 35 or 40 of them now. And we might walk 10 or 15 miles before we find something. And most of the time, it's just a bone in the bank. There's no head there. But
now, the ones behind you, they've all got like different tints and colors. Do you add that? Do you have like just different? What is it?
Is it natural or
not natural? Obviously, but
that's what makes them all so unique. I call it patina, and depending on where you find that head, if it's been laying,
you froze up, Bill.
And out, sun can.
Let me make sure.
If that head's been laying out in the timber, and the sun can get to it, it'll bleach out. And if it's been buried, it might have moss on it. If it's been in a bank, it might have that dark color patina to it. It just ends up being wherever they were buried and what kind of soil that causes those different variations of color.
So those are natural behind you then. Everything is just how you found it.
Yes.
Oh, I thought you were adding like a stain, like a pigment to it. So that's just. So what were they buried in? Like the ones that have a more red tint to it. Where were they found?
That one was found in some really red-colored hills. The dirt's just red in color. I think they call it the Chugwater Formation.
That's fascinating. But like you said, like it had to lay there long enough to get buried, and then some other weather event had to take place for it to even get re-exposed. So what do? Do you wait for like a big rainstorm to go through your area, and then that's when you go hunt, or do you just hunt all the time and pray that luck's on your side?
Yeah, what I found works best is we've had several big snow years where we have a lot of high runoff in the spring. So any of these little creeks and tributaries in Wyoming that had water coming out of their banks, when that water rips through them and goes into those oxbows and around the corners, it erodes the bank, and the banks cave off. And so I walk a lot of those washouts looking for bones sticking out. I've also found some crevices up in the bighorns where the buffalo fell into these deep cracks. They're about 3 feet wide, and some of them are over 100 feet deep. You got to rappel to get down in them. It's cold. There's ice. There's snow. But I've found several of them in those deep cracks, and some of them are so frozen in the ground, I never did get them out. But they're completely preserved.
That's fascinating. When you say they're completely preserved, like they've still got skin and fur and all that on them, or is it just a skeleton that's pristine?
All the bones are there because everything that fell in that crack is there. And if you shine a flashlight down there and use binoculars and you see a bone, there's probably an entire bison down there if you can get down there to get it. But because it's been in the cold, frozen weather, they're just completely preserved. They're just they're not deteriorated and rotten from being in a bank somewhere.
That's crazy.
Have you found dinosaur bones ever?
I found a lot of small dinosaur bones, and if I'd had a backhoe to keep digging, I probably could have found a dinosaur, but that's illegal here.
It's illegal?
Yeah, you can't do any mining on public ground.
Oh, okay. I understand.
Speaking of mining then, Wyoming, have you ever found gold?
I don't think I have. I've found flakes of it in a creek, and I didn't know if it was fool's gold or real gold. But that's a pretty popular sport out here. There's quite a few folks doing that.
Have you come across any Native American like campgrounds or anything like that?
Probably everywhere.
Yes, that's my other passion in life, and I've done that ever since I was probably 5 or 6 years old. But my parents used to own 7,500 acres up in the Bighorn Mountains, and I found a couple natural springs up on their property where the Indians camped. And I mean, I found teepee rings all my life about everywhere I go, but this particular area was a large camp where they'd camped for generations after generations. I also found an Indian cave that I excavated, and I found about 17 different artifacts in that cave. One of them was an elk ivory that had a carving in it that was probably hung around somebody's neck, and there was a human tooth in there, and a big spearhead, some bird points, and that kind of stuff. But I've got quite a collection. I've probably got 1,000 arrowheads.
Now, when you say a teepee ring, that's just where the teepee was, and they trampled down all the natural vegetation, so it's still there today?
Yeah, the way you find a teepee ring is they placed large round rocks around the diameter of the teepee to hold it down, and so those rocks are still there. So you always look for a circle of rocks.
Oh, okay. So that's what it is.
That's pretty interesting. What do so you found the lance or the spear? You found some of those?
Yeah, I found several spearheads. They're 4, 5, 6 inches long, and they were probably tethered to a stick or a addle or something along that nature.
What were the Indians that were up there? What tribe were they?
What'd y'all have? Sioux and Crow?
Crow and Cheyenne and Arapaho.
Those were some
Shoshone.
tough people. Holy cow.
Oh, man.
Could you imagine living outside during a Wyoming winter?
Mm.
Well, think about this, and I've thought about this. You're sitting up on a big hilltop looking down a valley, and it's full of bison, and you got to go kill a bison. Are you going to do it off a horse with a spear? I can't even imagine doing that. Are you going to shoot it with an arrow? You're going to run it off a cliff? I think they did a lot of different things to have greater success. I think a lot of times they ran them up into a trap where the buffalo were caught, and then they ambushed them with bows and arrows and whatnot. But now you got this buffalo down, you've killed it, and you have a rock to skin it and a rock to process it. And pretty quick, it's frozen. I can't even imagine the work they went through just to get the hide and meat off of those things.
There wasn't very many fat Indians, I can tell you that much.
No.
But I wonder what the population of these camps were. Like, it couldn't have been more than 24 people?
No.
You think more than that? 50?
There's probably 200, 300, 400 in some bands and tribes, yeah.
How many bisons is it going to take to feed 200 or 300 people?
Well, they didn't waste anything.
But still,
the Indians didn't starve all the time. They had some bad years, but they ate pretty. They ate pretty consistent. But we didn't have the wild game in the country that we have now. I don't think. I bet there's more elk now than there was back then. But they lived off the buffaloes where they sustained themselves.
Yeah, the stuff that I've read is the landscape was just covered with bison. Very few elk, especially in the bighorns.
Yeah,
but my wife just handed me an artifact here that I found a couple of years ago. But this is what they call a spall or a blank, and this is just a big piece of rock that they've worked, and they were going to take it back to camp and make probably a huge spearhead out of it, but they never did get that done. And then this one is it's actually a petrified knife.
So that's just a rock that they worked into having a sharp edge on one side.
And that's a petrified
knife. And that's what they would use to clean a buffalo, gut a buffalo, skin a buffalo.
If you can see the sharpened edge on that, they would just use it to skin with like that.
Wow.
Now the Indians that used the black rock obsidian, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
They said they can get that as sharp as a surgeon's scalpel when they sharpen
it. It is.
Wow.
Yeah. Here's one that I've made out of obsidian.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, that's pretty.
That is very pretty. But that's your life. Like, you're going to go hunt buffalo, and you're going to make stuff to make your life hopefully a little bit easier to kill buffalo. You didn't waste any time. No, you didn't read. You didn't have TV to waste your time.
I don't think people I don't think people today realize how many buffalo they were. Those buffalo, the herds were miles wide, miles long.
Yeah, I read a document where somebody documented a herd of bison in Kansas that was 30 miles wide and 60 miles long.
Holy
If you can imagine the sound that would
Yeah.
make rumbling hills.
4 or 5 million buffalo.
And that's got to be why there weren't elk and other animal like we see today. I'm sure the buffalo just depleted the resources.
Yeah. No, you think about how we go camping and all the technology we have. And we have a barbecue grill and propane, and we have lanterns and flashlights and sharp knives and you name it, long-range shooting rifles and drones.
Yeah.
You think about an Indian back in the day, it wasn't fun. It was survival every day. Every day was about staying warm and having food in your stomach.
Yeah, it was a tough life. They were smart in some ways. The men hunted and fished, and the women did all the work. You know, we damn blew that up. We screwed that whole system up pretty quick.
We did. They had it figured out.
Yeah, they were pretty damn smart on that deal. I'm going to ask you this now, and this is going to be way out of left field, but you're a game warden in Wyoming. You ever seen something really weird that you didn't have any explanation for out in the middle of nowhere?
Yes. I actually come across that quite a bit. And, you know, I tell some stories in my book where you just see things out in the hills sometimes that you can't explain. I don't know if I got any examples right off the top of my head, but typically you'll get people that are trying to get away from society, and they just get back into the backcountry or the wilderness as far as they can, and they live there. And you never know what you're dealing with and if they're wanted or if they're armed. And, you know, I've ran into probably 3 or 4 different couples having an affair where I've walked right into it in the mountains, out in the hills, you know, people making out in the sagebrush, and you recognize them and say, hey, that guy's married and that gal's married, but they ain't married to each other. And you just kind of, so there's a thing I put in the book, what you see in the hills stays in the hills.
Yeah, exactly. So what do you do if you run across a camp and you know that the guy is staying there, and he is one of these guys that's trying to get away from society? What if he doesn't have ID on him? What do you do? How do you check to see if he is wanted from the law?
Yeah, you really can't. I mean, you've got a license plate you can run, and it may not even be the driver of that vehicle may not even be associated with who registered the vehicle. If they don't have any ID, you can't ID them. I just ran across one a couple weeks ago where I was out in the hills, and it was January. It's cold. There's a red van out there parked on top of a hill, and the van's been repainted. You can tell it says something heating and plumbing California. It's got California plates. It's got these custom rims on it. I mean, it was just a junky looking van. The rims are all rusted out, and I thought, God, Wyoming, California plates, January, this ain't adding up. So I got out of my truck and I banged on the window, and they had a curtain behind the seats, kind of like them old time vans. And I was waiting for some movement, maybe the van to rock back and forth, the curtains to open. It was just quiet, nothing. And I thought, well, maybe nobody's even in this thing. And so I got back in my truck and I drove down the road, and I sat there for a minute. And I thought about it. I thought, no, something's wrong with this. So I went back there, and this time I just got close enough with my binoculars that I could get their plate number. And I ended up having to leave that area because I didn't have any radio coverage to run the plate. So I went about 3 miles north, ran the plate, told the dispatch, this is a weird deal. Come up with whatever you can for me on this. And she said, okay, I'll get back to you. I thought I better get back up there and see what's going on. And the van was gone. Mm-mm. And so he knew I was there, or whoever was in it knew I was there, and they left. And it hadn't been very long, so I hauled ass down the road, and I got on a big hill where I could look below me. They were about 3 miles away, turning onto a main highway. So I hauled ass down there, got on the road, got in right behind him. He's doing 50 miles an hour. He's not crossing the center line. He's not doing anything wrong. I followed him for probably 4 miles. I'm just waiting for dispatch to call back and have some information on this guy. I finally passed him. I got about 5 miles ahead of him, and he just kept slowly disappearing and disappearing in my rearview mirror. And I thought, he's going to turn around and go the other direction. Still waiting for a call from dispatch. I turn around, and I met him on the road right when she called, and she had actually called California, got a name, at least off of the plate, checked to see if it was wanted, couldn't come up with anything. So I had no probable cause to stop him at that point, and I know something was wrong there. And maybe somebody was in the back of the van that they had kidnapped, or who knows what.
Right.
But I just felt like that's a situation that's not adding up here. And if I could have talked to him before he got on the road, I could have checked his ID and all of that. But I missed that opportunity.
Yeah, your spidey senses go off in a certain way. You just know something's not quite adding up.
Yeah.
That's too bad.
You ever had a run-in with a bear?
Oh yeah. I've never had to shoot one in self-defense, but I've had to pull my bear spray before.
I don't think I could do that shit. If a bear's fixing to eat my ass, I'm not pulling bear spray. I'm shooting him.
Have you ever come across like a suicide or anything out in the middle of the woods?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. When I first hired on, I got a call on the radio that there were shots fired at a certain location in a little town, and I was like 2 blocks from there. And I thought, well, I'm close. So I got on the radio and I said, can I help with this? And they said, yeah, that'd be great. So I pull up in front of this guy's house, the address they gave me, and this guy's sitting in his front yard, Indian style. He's got his hands over his face. He's crying, and he's got blood coming out through his hands. And I didn't know if somebody just shot him or if he had shot at somebody. All I heard, there was shots fired. So I parked my truck and I yelled at him. I said, what's going on out there? Can I help you? And he stood up and came walking towards me, and he was crying. And I said, what's going on? And he said, I just got in a fight with my son in the basement, and my son punched me in the mouth and locked himself in the bedroom, and I heard a gunshot, and I can't get in the bedroom. And so I actually had another game warden with me that day, and we were the first ones to go in the bedroom, and the kid had shot himself in the head, and his brains were laying in his hat on the floor next to the bed. And so you don't forget stuff like that.
No, and there's no amount of training in the world that could ever possibly prepare you for walking into that room and seeing that.
No, and I learned something about coroners that day. The coroners showed up with a yellow bag, threw him in the yellow bag, drug it up the stairs, out the door in the back of a Suburban. It's just another day,
Yeah.
I was like, well, holy cow.
Yeah, totally desensitized to it.
Just a year or two ago, I stopped to talk to a guy who was shooting. He was sighting in his rifle on some state property, and I bullshitted with him for a little bit. And he said, hey, that car over there has been sitting there for over a week. And he said, I saw it there last week. And I said, okay, I'll check it out. So I went over there, and it was a pretty decent car. It was locked, and you could look through the windows, and there's a lot of personal stuff in there, clothes and backpack and some hunting stuff. And I thought to myself, this isn't adding up. This car's been sitting here a week. It's a nice car. It's not abandoned. Wonder if this guy didn't go shoot himself somewhere. So I took a hike, and I got up on a ridge, and I could actually smell something dead. And I looked everywhere that I was at that day and didn't find anything. But a couple days later, a hunter found this guy, and he had shot himself.
Yeah. I mean, it's a desolate place, and a lot of people can, they can just kind of slip off and then do these things. Our game wardens out here this last winter, a guy got lost. A blizzard set in. He was deer hunting and couldn't find his way back to his ATV, and they had a big man search for this guy. Unfortunately, the weather overcame him.
Okay, I'm going to ask something really weird. You ever see a UFO?
I believe I have. As a young kid out on Bear Creek Ranch, this would have been back in the late 70s, and you were getting more reports of them back then. But there was a couple things that I saw late at night that there's no explanation for. One night I was staying in the house by myself. This was a remote ranch house out in the middle of nowhere. And I kept looking out the window to see if my parents were coming home, because you could see their headlights for a couple miles. I had actually climbed up this huge hill. It was probably 2 miles high to get to the top. It was a big bentonite hill. And I made a sheep herder's monument up there that stood about 6 feet high. And this was, just south of our house, like 3 or 4 miles. And I'm sitting there looking out the window waiting for my parents to come home, and this bright light, like it landed up on top of that hill. It just hovered down, huge bright light. It's probably 3 or 4 miles away. I know where it's at because I know that hill is there. And long story short, I go to school the next morning and the road goes right by that hill, and I look up there and the monument's gone. And I thought, why would the monument be gone? And to be honest with you, years later, God, it was 20 years later, I decided to hike up there and look at that. And there's a landing zone up there made out of white plastic that's got spikes through the plastic to hold it to the ground. And the monument's gone. They took the frickin' monument.
It's crazy.
What this will be my last question for you. Another weird. What about Bigfoot? Anything weird like that?
You know, personally, I don't believe in Bigfoot, but I've got some good friends that I think are good people, and they do believe in him. And,
that's like the Texas way of saying bless their heart. Like,
yeah.
You know, they're good people, but just bless their heart.
Well, I was camping up in a canyon over by Pinedale one night. We took horses up there, and I was sitting by a campfire with a really good friend of mine who is a guide and an outfitter. And the fires are crackling there. And he says, Scott, I hate this canyon. And I said, why is that? He goes, Bigfoot lives in this canyon. And I've heard him scream before. I've heard screams in this canyon that I can't even describe. And, you know, this is a good friend of mine that's hunted his whole life. And he's convinced Bigfoot's in that canyon. But no, we have people show up primarily from Utah that are on the Bigfoot hunt. And they're totally all about Bigfoot.
See, I
think it'd be fun with trail cameras that people have on their bear bait sites now. If we could get a Bigfoot suit and put it on and go romping through some of those bear bait sites.
The Bigfoot thing, we got so many trail cams out there, and the footage off of these trail cams, it's HD. I mean, it's impeccable quality that we have now. There's not one picture of a Bigfoot that's in high definition that you can look and say, yep, that is definitely a Bigfoot. And you would figure the woods are littered with them now. With these you figure there would be one, at least one. But there's not any.
Yeah, I agree.
Aliens, you know, UFOs, I can, you know, the trail cam's probably not going to pick that up.
Okay, before we get off here, when's your second book going to be out?
Well, thanks for asking that. I'm working on it right now, and I'm on the last chapter, so it needs to be edited and a lot of things need to happen, but as far as writing it, I'm almost complete, and I hope to have it out in 3 months or so.
So you come back on here when it comes out?
Yes, I would do that.
What made you want to write this series now, basically?
Well, to make it short, if you read the first book, I wanted people to know how I grew up as a child because it was a very unique childhood with the crap that I went through and all the wrecks, motorcycle wrecks, four-wheeler wrecks, horse wrecks, having a dad that was a poacher, having been poaching with him before. That's probably what inspired me to be a game warden. So then I was a game warden for 28 years, and I thought I want to write a book about my childhood, at least document how I grew up, so if I forget it someday, it'll be documented. And I got to thinking about it. You know, I've had a pretty unique life where I have all these stories, and my dad was a poacher. And there's a lot of people out there that could say they were the son of a poacher, but how many of them became a game warden on top of that, and a Wyoming game warden? And so I wanted everybody to know how I got from point A to point B, but I never really got to tell any really good game warden stories. And so my second book's going to tail off and follow my journey as a game warden. And it's just going to tell about all the crazy true stories that I can remember. And I think I could probably write several books.
That's fascinating.
Well, I look forward to reading your books. I enjoyed your first book. Tell everybody where they can find you and get a hold of you.
Yeah, the best way to get the book is to go to my website, scottwerblow.com. And it's kind of confusing to navigate it through if you're on your phone versus your computer. But if you're on your phone, just click enter and then click on the picture of the book, and it'll navigate you through there to where you can get a personalized message from me, and I'll sign it, and I'll actually be the guy that mails it to you. That's scottwerblow.com. And you can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, eBay. You can probably get it there cheaper. I don't make much money when you get it there. They're kind of a power hog.
They've got it figured out, don't they?
I can't control any of that. That, you know, they were selling my book before I even had a copy of it in my hands. It took me 2 weeks to get my book, and they were already selling it. So, but you can get it there. You can probably get it there cheaper, but it won't have a personalized message or signature.
Well,
and this is what the book looks like.
Very good. Now, roughly how long did it take you to write this first book, and then how long has it taken you to write your second book?
I started writing on the first book in early November, and it was for sale on Amazon March 7th.
Wow.
And it's a very good book with lots of detail. Very, very good book.
Well, thank you. And the second book, I've been working on it for off and on since the first book came out.
That's crazy. That's not as long as I thought it would be.
You know, the second book is going to be about 10 chapters and about 20 pages per chapter. And if I don't have any interruptions and I'm in the groove, I can write about a chapter a day.
Yeah. So it just how you manage your time. It's
Yeah.
great stuff.
Well,
great stuff.
We appreciate you being on here. I wish you the best. If I ever get up that way, I'm going to come. We're going to have a cup of coffee and we'll talk about them liberals in Jackson Hole.
Hey, that'd be awesome. We'll have a bonfire and a whiskey and a cigar.
You're one of the funniest things, and I'm going to steal this, is you're not very technologically savvy because it takes you 90 minutes to watch 60 minutes. I'm going to use that.
It takes you an hour and a half.
An hour and a half to watch 60 minutes. I'm going to use that. That's very good. Hey, Scott, we appreciate you. God bless you, my friend. Good luck on the book. I recommend everybody go get this book. It's a good story. Especially anybody in their mid-50s. You'll relate to a lot of this stuff. Anyways, thank you, sir. We appreciate you very much.
Thank you, guys, and it's been great to meet both of you.
Yes, sir. We look forward to the second book coming out and having you back on. Have a great spring, my friend.
All right, thanks. Take care.
Thank you. Scott Werbelow.
Scott Werblow.
Very interesting.
Son of a poacher.
He's lucky to be alive. When you read the book, you think, that little fucker's got 10 lives, not 9 lives.
You bogarted it, so I haven't had the
I read
opportunity
it on ebook last night.
Ah,
the whole thing.
Gotcha.
We didn't even get to know Scott till Sunday, or Monday, and it's
book
Thursday.
Wasn't even out. Well, his book was out on Monday.
And I done it online. I read it on ebook last night. Read the whole book. You'd be welcome to hold my laptop if you want to read it.
No, that's okay.
It's a very good book, though. But the original Bad News Bears, his childhood would have been one of those kids on there.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. It's a great book. Divorced parents. Dad drank a lot. Mom was a hairdresser. Met this really nice guy. Moved to the country. Just the shit that he got into. I mean, it's just a really good book. I should have asked him if he got caught shoplifting when he was a kid.
Well, you should have, Jeff.
I forgot all about it. I make myself notes, and as I went on, I thought about it. But anyways, he gets caught shoplifting. His mom calls the cops on him when the store owner calls her.
That's tough.
He learned a lesson there.
That's right.
Tough love, really, really neat. It's just it's a good story. I enjoyed it. It brought back a lot of memories for me too. So I didn't get caught shoplifting. Tony did once.
Tony did?
Oh yeah, it was great.
What'd he steal?
Some candy from a Brock's Candy. They used to have candy. They used to sell bulk candy at stores, and Brock's would have it. And they had all kinds of shit. And Tony walked over and got him a piece of candy out and was eating it. My dad's caught him. Dad made Tony go to the store manager and apologize for stealing a 1 cent piece of candy. And Dad made him sit there where all the people were checking out by the candy until we got done getting our shit. Tony was bawling and shit. I never forget that.
Poor Anthony.
Oh, my dad was pissed.
But was he wasn't stealing it. He was just impatient and popped it in his mouth. Or did he have no intention of?
Oh, he was just going to give him a piece of candy and walk by and grabbed a piece of candy, put it in his mouth, started eating it. And he was, and Dad goes, "Where'd you get that at?"
Right there.
So you stole that candy. Dad said, "Well, you're going to go apologize to the store manager." And Tony had to go apologize and instead there was bawling. And then the ladies walked by. Oh, that poor kid. Poor kid's ass shouldn't have stolen that. Boy, Dad was pissed.
Well, Bastard was stealing. You got to get them early.
Oh, I did something one time at Kmart or something when I was little, and I don't remember exactly what I did, but I remember my dad grabbed me by my head, called me a little pig fucker. He was pissed about something, and he carried me by my hair.
Whew.
You saw Dad's big-ass hands.
Mm-hmm.
He was pissed.
You're going to have to turn those heaters off.
No.
I know we got Wyoming coming on a couple of days, but it's going to be scorching in here.
That's fine. All right, let's get off here. Thank y'all for listening to us. God bless y'all. Have a great, this comes out on Friday, right?
Yep.
Y'all have a great weekend, and Wyman's will come out on Monday while you're snow skiing, right?
That's right.
All right. Thank y'all very much. God bless y'all, and have a great day.
Fresh pal. Go check out all of our great sponsors. Check out Dive Bomb Industries, Boss Shot Shells, Pacific Calls. It's turkey season coming up, so you need a brand new Pacific Call. Alpha Outdoors, Shin Gear Waders, Dirty Duck Coffee, Lucky Duck, Gun Dog Outdoors, Looking Glass Duck Club Podcast, Steak Plains Meats, and Stanfield Hunting Outfitters.